I hope you had a very useful and productive day yesterday, and we want to make sure the same happens today. So thank you all for coming. My name is Saurabh Gupta. I work out of New York City with the Google Docs team. You can follow me on Twitter or on Plus. And I'm going to talk to you about Google Apps Script. So when I woke up this morning, I said, I'm going to have two goals in mind today for this talk. The first is, I'm going to show you how easy and powerful Google Apps Script is. And the second goal today is for me to show you how you can write enterprise workflows using Google Apps Script. So along the way, I'm going to talk to you about different kind of app script services and APIs, and then we are going to talk a little bit about enterprise workflows. So before I start, just by a show of hands, how many of you use Google Apps for a personal or business? Yeah, that's expected, all of you. And how many of you have heard or used Google Apps Script? Cool, okay. So what is Google Apps Script? Google Apps Script is a JavaScript engine in the cloud. So for those of you who attended App Engine sessions, there is a parallel here. So what App Engine gives you is a Java runtime in the cloud. Google Apps Script gives you a JavaScript runtime in the cloud. So this is JavaScript in the cloud, which is JavaScript on the server side in the cloud. How do you use it? You write code in a browser that is JavaScript code, and that code gets saved on Google servers. It executes on Google servers, and the response is returned back to the browser. App script is JavaScript syntax. And we have made it a lot easier and richer, but we didn't stop there. We also gave you access to integrate with third-party APIs. So I'm going to talk a lot about Google Apps Script APIs and services and how you can access third-party APIs. So how do you get started with Apps Script? Well, as the name suggests, it is apps script. Even though it is a JavaScript engine in the cloud, meaning when you execute your scripts, you get a sanitized JavaScript runtime environment with Google servers, but still the focus is a little bit on apps. And the reason is we want to make it a lot more meaningful and easy for you to use Apps Script, and with apps APIs in particular. So you access Apps Script from spreadsheets and from sites, and that's how you get started writing Apps Script. But you don't end there. You use a lot of APIs, and you can embed your scripts with different variety of use cases, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But the origins of Apps Script are rooted in the form that we first started with Apps Script a couple of years ago as a capability to provide macros in Google Spreadsheet. But that was just the start, and the product is a lot more, and it is very workflow-centered. So why should you use Apps Script? Well, there are three main reasons I want to harp today on why you want to use Apps Script. The first reason is workflow and automation. Now, workflow is a very generic term, and you can have a variety of different types of workflow products and workflow solutions. But when we thought of workflow, we thought that a Google Apps user as a personal user or an organizational user, a business user, or a developer, for that matter, should be able to automate and implement workflows across various Google Apps products. And the first use case of automation was a macro in a spreadsheet, but that was just the origins of Apps Script. What we did with that whole approach was that we created this whole JavaScript runtime in the cloud, and then ran with it and integrated all these Google properties: calendar, sites, mail, document, contacts, tasks. The variety of these APIs are now available for you in the cloud via Apps Script. But the use case, the number one use case remains the same, which is you can implement workflows and implement automation. That's the number one use case for Google Apps Script. The number two use case as to why you want to use Apps Script is you want to use Apps Script to implement the use cases that you have in mind when you use Google Apps. So Google Apps products are great. They meet 99.99, or it'll go even further, 99.99% of the times your requirements. But there are business situations, there are business requirements where you want to extend Google Apps the way you want to extend. And this is where Apps Script comes in, and this is where you can customize your use of Google Apps according to your business needs. The third reason why you want to use Google Apps Script is because it's cost effective. Now, I don't mean in terms of dollars and cents. What I mean is in terms of efficiency. There's no software to deploy, obviously, because this is you're coding in a browser, literally. No hardware deployments, obviously. But the hidden gem here is that the onus of security is not with the developer, but with Apps Script engine itself. So the scripts that you write run in the Google Apps accounts and identity of the person or the developer who's writing the script. So we take care of a lot of authentication and authorization issues that may arise because of writing scripts. So you will see that when you write scripts, you will never have to deal with authentication at all. But yet it is very secure. You will have to deal with very minimal type of authorization, yet it is very secure. You will not have to deal with the complexities of OAuth, and yet it is secure. And I'm going to show you some of that. So before I get started into why you want to use it, let me show you an example. So I go into a document. So I go to docs.google.com, and I'm going to show you a very basic, simple script. And I say, create new, say, spreadsheet. So I am in a spreadsheet now. So what do I do with it? Well, if you've played around with the spreadsheet a little, you will see that there is a tools menu, and you click on that, and you will see a script editor. And once you click on script editor, what will happen is that it will load a browser-based IDE for you, a browser-based integrated development environment. Now think about it. Isn't this fantastic or what? This is a cloud IDE. You got all the makings of an IDE here. You have a toolbar, and I'm going to show you some of the powers of the toolbar. You have projects. You have a code editor, which is a first-class JavaScript code editor, and soon you're going to see power of this code editor. So this is one way to write a script, but this is not the only way to write the script. You can access the same editor through a Google Sites page, and I'm going to show you that as well. But just for an example's sake, let's say you want to write a script, and I'm going to show you how to write a script. So and this is pure JavaScript. Say, let me increase the zoom here. Say I want to read a particular value of a cell and have it emailed to me, right? So I create a variable called sheet, and then there is a spreadsheet app. This is a class, which is like a spreadsheet API. And as soon as I say dot, and there you see it. So this is the power. This is the autocomplete, and I say get active sheet. Now you will notice that I did not start with authentication. Like as if you were to use most APIs, you would say, oh, what's the password, what's the ID, or what's the OAuth credential, all that. I did not start with any of that. And that's one of the powers of Apps Script, which is security and authentication is taken care of by you, for you by Google Apps Script. So, and when this script runs, it runs under my identity. So you can see right away how powerful that is, like how easy it is to use APIs now, right? So I have a variable here, sheet, and I say, well, I want to get a cell. And this is a very, very basic example. I'm going to show you some more interesting ones. So I say get say range, and I say cell, say A2 or something, right? So now I have reference to a cell, and say if I want to do something interesting with the cell, I have all these functions here. Now this is just one type of service, which is spreadsheet service. We have document services, sites services, Gmail, mail, calendar, contacts, tasks, and we are adding constantly a bunch of services. So say I want to, in this example, I want to get, say, value of cell, right? So I say cell dot get value, right? And then say if I want to email it, so I'll say mail app dot send email. You get the drift. I don't need to complete it, but you see the power of Google Apps Script here, right? So this is a very simple example, and just wanted to show you how you can get started with writing scripts, being more productive. That's a side effect, but writing great workflows and using Google Apps the way you want to use Google Apps. So this is a very simple example. Let me show you some more complex examples as to what types of apps you can build. So this is I have a set of examples here. So I go to, and these are applications that are embedded in Google Apps Script. So I click on a site, and I will show you two applications. One is a time booking application that you can build and embed in Google Sites. So the great thing about Google Apps Script is that when you use it in combination with Google Sites, you get a free backend. The JavaScript engine in the cloud sort of becomes your backend, and Sites sort of page becomes your front end. So I'm going to show you a time booking app, which I wrote as an example of how, say, a law firm can ask its employees to book time. Now, this is a Google Sites page. This is a custom UI application. The data is being stored in a spreadsheet. How cool is that? And it takes a few lines of code to build an app like that. So I'm going to go in here and I say, I want to book some time. Let's say I'm a hard worker, I work whatever, and I click on submit timesheet, and my time is now submitted. This is the power of Google Apps Script. It gives you a easy to use backend without actually deploying any code, but just by writing some code in a browser, and now your Sites page sort of comes alive. I'm going to show you another example. And by the way, these are using Apps Script services, which are called UI services. So you can build UI applications as well. It's not just about macros. It's about workflow, right? So I'm going to show you another app. And this app is a sort of a training app, which is that an organization wants to offer some training to its employees, and they want the employees to sign up for training or something like that. So let's click on this training app. So the first thing is that I want to choose the category of the type of training I want to take. Say I don't know anything about Spanish. Maybe I want to learn Spanish so I can talk to you in Spanish. So I click on language instruction, and it pulls data from Netflix's API. Now this is a Google Sites page. You did not deploy anything. You just wrote some code in a browser. You are able to talk to Netflix's API, pull the data out, show it on your Sites page. So you can see all the titles here, and these are some titles around language. So I say, well, I want to learn Spanish. I will add it to my queue. So I click on add to my queue. So now it asks you, when do you want to schedule this training? Maybe there is a special room in the organization where people take training, and I want to schedule that in the calendar. And that room has a particular calendar, right? So I can certainly choose. I'll say, okay, I want to schedule it, well, let's say today, because I want to speak to you guys in Spanish, right? So I'll say, let's schedule it at, say, 1 p.m. or something. I'll say schedule training. So now that's the second step. And now it actually, you were able to access calendar using Google Apps Script APIs, and a training has been scheduled. So let's see whether that really happened or not. So I go to calendar, and I have a example calendar, and there you see. All by writing some code in the browser, you were able to access Netflix's API, which is like a third-party data store or something, and you were able to create some UI application in your Sites page, access the calendar, spreadsheet. How cool is that? Without deploying any code, just writing some code in a browser, right? So this is the power of Google Apps Script. Now, So what all different types of services does it provide you, right? So let's go into the presentation real quick. And I'll talk to you a little bit about AppScript services, and then we will jump into the workflow. So there are 4 categories of AppScript services, and these are represented by the 4 boxes around services. The first category of services are services and APIs around content. So when we were creating AppScript, we thought, well, you should be able to access your content, your data. And as Google Apps users, you know that your data lives in a spreadsheet, a document, a sites, even docs list. So docs list is when you go to docs.google.com and you see a whole bunch of files which are either your Google Apps, Google Docs products, or arbitrary files or whatever, you should be able to access that. You should be able to manage all of that. And even Gmail inbox is data, right? So you get tons of such emails. These are threads, and each thread has messages. You should be able to programmatically access that data. So we created these APIs, which are called content services. Now you can use these services to access all of your content and do something meaningful with it. How do you do that? Pretty simple. I showed you in the example. You can access spreadsheets, like using spreadsheet app here, and this is a very simple example. Same goes for document app, sites app, Gmail app, all that. Now I'll give you an example of the use of Gmail, which is a new service that we came about. So I was volunteering for this organization called DoSomething.org, and they fund low-income kids for college education. And all these kids, when they are in school or college, they send reports back to this organization about how their progress is and all that. So this organization, this nonprofit, needed a way to somehow create these reports, because they were getting thousands and thousands of these emails, and they wanted to get an automated way to create reports out of their inbox. So we created an app script which accesses their Gmail inbox, collects all the information that is in the emails, and then creates reports using document services. How cool is that? Have you ever been able to access your inbox programmatically? Probably not, but with AppScript you can. Another example of Gmail services is that we wanted to incorporate Gmail snooze, and we put this up on our apps developers blog as well. We wrote a script, which is a time-driven script, and it allows you to snooze emails. So for instance, if you get an email and you know it's an important email, but you can't address it right away, and you want that email to stay in your inbox for 3 days, then it becomes kind of painful. Your inbox becomes messy. You can snooze on that email, and it goes away, and it comes back up 3 days later. So it's like your old alarm clock nagging thing. So those are the types of apps you can build. Those are personal productivity apps, but that's another like edge use cases. But main use case here is, again, workflow. So what are the second types of services? Well, now you have access to your data, right? But you want to do something meaningful with it. So use AppScript, access your data, apply logic, massage your data, but now you want to share it with someone. So that's when messaging services come in. You'll be able to access calendar, your contacts, schedule meetings. So another example is one of the developers built an app script for a salesperson who was managing their sales data in a spreadsheet and had to send sales reports every Friday to the sales team and the sales manager and all that. And it was a tedious task but it was a repetitive task. They needed some automation. No workflow, but just simple automation, right? So what they did was they used AppScript. How cool is that? Access their spreadsheet, apply all sorts of logic, create a report using document services, share the document and email it to whoever they want to share it with, and then schedule a meeting. If the sales numbers are low, you schedule a meeting. If sales numbers are high, you schedule a meeting, right? And you can all do that in an automatic way. So that's the power of messaging services, which is not only we let you access your content, but you can do something meaningful with it because you have the power of JavaScript and all the constructs of a proper language in the cloud, right? And then you can share it with whoever you want to share it with. The third type of services are third-party services. So we know that not all of your content is in Google Apps products, right? You may have some data, say, in Salesforce CRM system or any other third-party CRM system. You may have some data in a database. You may have access to you may want to access some other APIs out there in the cloud. So we provided access to endpoints. So if there is a service, a REST service, that exposes an endpoint, say with an OAuth type security mechanism, then you can use AppScript to access data using that REST service. And OAuth is very simple to implement in AppScript. It's just 2 lines of code. If there is an endpoint, SOAP endpoint, and you want to access those services using AppScript, you can. If you have a database which has a JDBC endpoint, and if that database is out there in the cloud, which Google servers can access, then you can access that data through that JDBC endpoint. And all that through Google AppScript. So now imagine you got a backend, a JavaScript engine in the cloud. You can access your Google content. You do your messaging. You can also access a proper database, a SOAP endpoint or a REST endpoint, and all of a sudden you can write kick-ass application. But then there is one piece missing, the UI, which ties everything together, right? So we have provided UI services in AppScript as well, and I'm going to show you an example real quick. UI services in AppScript are built on top of Google Web Toolkit. So there are a lot of widgets that are available in Google Web Toolkit are available in UI services. So without talking further, let me show you an example of how you will build a UI app using Google Apps. So let's go to sites, or rather, I have a demo site here. Say I create a page. It's a little slow. Okay, so let's create a page. Say I'll say GDD demo, and I create a page. So this is the first step when you start writing a script, right? You create a page because this page is going to become the home for your UI, right? So as soon as I create this page, I save it. Then I have created a page. Now I want to write a script. So I click on More Actions here on the right. This is where all sites pages sites have that, and I click on Manage Site here. So as soon as I click on Manage Site, obviously I can do more advanced things in sites. So I click on AppScript, and then I can add a new script here. And then I go into the script editor, and I'll show you real quick how you can do UI applications. The reason why UI applications are important and UI services are important is because when you start developing your workflow, the views in the workflow are going to be an important part of that application. So let's just develop a real UI app real quick. So the first thing when you develop a UI application is you implement HTTP GET. Right, so that's by default do get in AppScript. Then you say, well, I want to create an application. So you will say UI, you guessed it, app, and then you say create application, and all of a sudden you can start writing some applications. So let's say I want to create a label. So I say app.create label. So you can see here the number of widgets that are available to you. So you can build some really complex applications, right? So I say create label, and say enter name. Now I say I want a text box because I want to create a form where I want to let people enter their names, right? So I say app.create text box. But you get the drift, right? So once you have the widgets, and this is a very simple application, you can assemble them. You can say add app.add, and I'll add a label, and app.add, I'll add a text box. And I will say something like return app. Now this is something new. Now why do we have this return of application? So you have to understand that this code actually runs on Google servers. This is server-side JavaScript. UI is not being assembled on browser DOM. It is being assembled on the server side, and then the codec is being sent to the browser. That's what's happening. So that's why we have to return app. So I save it. Let me save it real quick. I'll say demo. Once I save it, now I have a very simple basic app. Now I can do more things with it. I can actually have a UI builder. I can drag and drop and create more complex UI. So we have actually a drag and drop UI builder. You are welcome to try that out. You can drag all these labels and all these different widgets and all that, and create even more complex applications. Oops. Okay. You can create even more complex applications. So let's go back to our application here, and let me just show you how you can embed it in. So now we had created a sites page. So now we want to insert that script that we wrote. So I'll edit the page, and I'll say insert, and you will see this app script gadget. So any script that you write in UI, and that's going to be true of your workflow application, which you're going to see in a minute, and it'll say GDD demo, and you select it. And then it will allow you to configure, which I'm not going to bother with right now, and I'll just hit on save. So I have inserted an app script gadget, and I click on save, and the script gets executed. So now you'll notice that we did not create a button and submit button, but this was an earlier script that I wrote. So just to show you. So how easy it is to create UI applications using app script. You did not have to worry about backend. You did not have to worry about code deployment and all that. And this is going to come in very handy when you write workflow applications. So with that, let me show you a little bit about how you can write workflows. So just as a quick recap, there are 4 types of services. Services around your content, messaging, services around accessing third-party data, and then UI services, right? But then when we start thinking of a workflow, what are the few things that we have in mind, right? So I'm going to explain a little bit about how to develop workflows using this example sample workflow that I have. This is a very simple case management workflow that, say, a very medium-sized law firm, for example, would have. So here, a paralegal would come in and create a case, and a partner would sort of approve it, whether it's ready for being presented in a court or something like that, and then you have the workflow. So when you think about these workflows, you have to think about 3 things specifically. One is the workflow itself, its states, the definition, the data of the workflow, how do you store the data, and all that. The second thing that you have to think about is where does this workflow find its home? Where is the UI going to show? How is it going to show up? How you're going to glue together the states with the UI and the workflow and the data and all that. And that's where Google Sites come in, which is Sites sort of becomes a natural home for workflow. So let me give you an example. If you are, say, a Google Apps domain user, so you can create these Google Sites pages as your intranet or even external sites, right? And then those sites sort of become the home of where your organization members or your employees or fellow or your colleagues go to action on a workflow. So Sites, as you have just seen, becomes a home where not only you can embed your scripts as UI and create the home for those applications, but it sort of glues everything together in terms of views. Then comes the spreadsheet. Now, why are spreadsheets important? So when you design a workflow, You design all the states, you design all the views, you design the sites page, and you embed the scripts. You need to find a home for your data. Now, we are using Google Apps here, right? So there are a couple of choices we got. There's no shortage of choices. With AppScript, either we can store data in a spreadsheet, which is a useful store of data if you do not have millions of activations on that workflow. So depending on the size, you can store it in a spreadsheet, or you can store it in a JDBC database, for example, right? If you have millions and millions of such workflow activations, right? So there is no shortage of that. In this example that I'm going to show you, we chose spreadsheet because it's an easy store. Now, one of the advantages of storing data in a spreadsheet, or rather using AppScript to store data in a spreadsheet, is that AppScript is a JavaScript engine in the cloud. So all our data is represented in JavaScript classes, but we convert the data from JavaScript into JSON and dump it in a spreadsheet. And then we can retrieve it back and convert it into JavaScript classes. So it's a very fast operation. It's easy. But the important thing is that you need to find a data store. So what are the three things, again, that you want to have when you want to think about when you think about workflow applications? One is the workflow itself, its states, the views. The second thing is where the workflow needs to find its home, meaning where the user should go and how they should interact, and the UI and all that. And the third thing is, where should the data be? So it could be in a spreadsheet or a database. And Google Apps Script sort of comes in and glues everything together, right? So you can define your workflow in AppScript, and you sort of implement a state machine, which will tell you what states there are, how those states are initialized, how those views are initialized, which view to present to a user, and all that. Because you have a powerful JavaScript construct available on the server side, you can define all of that. You can define the workflow, you can define the state machine. Then you can define your views using UI services with AppScript. And you can access a spreadsheet or a database, again, using third-party services or content services, and store your data, right? So let's talk about the first thing, which is the workflow itself. So workflow has two main things. Three main things. The definition itself, and we saw in this some kind of a flow, right? So you have to have that flow in mind. So once you have that flow in mind, then you want to implement that flow in sort of your state machine. But how do you do that? So first thing is, you create these classes called workflow states. So what are workflow states? Well, each state has, in this example, has initialization, process, and end, and same goes for, and each state has a view associated with it. One or more views, by the way. But basically, the idea is that the state machine knows which state the workflow is in, or how it got transitioned into a particular state, and which views to show next, right? The second thing is about the workflow is what type of data exists. So the data is, again, a functionality-less sort of a JavaScript class, meaning it is just a data store. So in this example, you will see workflow data has an ID, and then has an array of data of individual states here, right? So this is a very basic, simple way of representing workflow data. And in this particular code snippet, you will see that when a workflow class was implemented, the save workflow function sort of converts everything in JSON here on the second last line, you'll see, and it's stored as a JSON in a spreadsheet. So let's look at the code here real quick. So let me go back to the demo. So I have a domain, and I have a site called case management. So I click on it, and then I go into the site page, which is by default this example workflow that I had just implemented. So as you can see, this is the first landing page for our workflow. So here I can do a few things. I can action on an existing workflow, or I can create a new one. So if I click on create new, I can put in, say, client name, say Jane Doe or something, and say litigation, and I'll say court date is whatever, right? And I create the case. So what happens is it goes back and it creates the case, and then it goes into a particular state, which is an approved state. So if you have certain roles or permissions, then you can go ahead and approve it, right? So let's look at this code. So I click on More Actions. I click on Manage Site. And I click on App Script. And I get this big script. And you're going to see the script and how complex scripts can get. And that goes to show the power and complexity of Google Apps Script. So this is an Apps Script project with lots and lots of files and classes defined in it. And you will see that a workflow sort of is a combination of workflow data and multiple states. And a workflow is created, we sort of wire the states together, right, in this line of code. And then we create all the states and put it in the states array. That's just one way of gluing. And then if you look at, say create case state, this is an example of a state, you will see that there are a variety of functions here that have been implemented to sort of facilitate the state machine. So you have process state, which knows when the submission happened and all that, and then you can see the different types of views. Okay. So what's the sequence like? So what happens when a user first come into the workflow, like I did in that example, right? So when the do-get happens, the workflow is initialized, and each of these states are initialized, and views are initialized, and then the first view is shown, right? But then when a user actions on a particular view, so it doesn't matter where you are, the state machine is sort of going to take care of where you are, but whether the user gets to the app the first time or actually submits a form, in this case, create, say, a case or an approve a case or anything like that, then all the views are hidden because this is an Ajax application, a Google Web Toolkit style application. And then the state machine processes the workflow, as you can see, and then the relevant state is processed. And upon processing the relevant state based on the user input, it saves the data or transitions the workflow into a different state, and it shows the next view. So let's go back into the code. And let's show you an example of that. So here, you will see that when the view is initialized, basically we are creating a form that we know we need to show to the user when user gets to this particular state. So you'll see that we are not returning the app here. We are just adding the views in the JavaScript that needs to be sent back to the browser for rendering purposes. But the bulk of the action is actually happening in the process state mode, which is it sort of gets all the data that is submitted. So in this case, the client name, the case type, and all that, and it moves to the next state because that's the state machine implementation, and then it saves the workflow, and it gets the next state, and then it initializes the next state, and it sort of transitions the control over. But the overall idea here is that there are three things that you need to implement a workflow using AppScript. One is the state machine itself, the workflow definition, the workflow data, the workflow states. The second thing is the sites page, which you just saw in this example. And the third thing is your data store. In this case, it could be a spreadsheet, like it is, or it could be a database. And once you have that, you can build on the complexity of your application based on what the type of workflow you have. But my goal here was to show you how simple and easy it is to implement a state machine and a workflow application. So how do you get started using Google Apps Script? Well, we have a variety of documents available. Our documentation is really very powerful. So I'm going to show you real quick how you can get started with Google Apps Script. So, wow. Okay. So you can easily go to our documentation site, and you will see that there are 3 sections in there. And as soon as it opens up, I'm going to show you what those 3 sections are. So once you click on Docs, This is going to look like similar to any other Google documentation, which is you have documentations, you have blog, and you have support, which is our forum, which is very, very active, one of the most active forums in the apps community. So I click on docs, and then you will see that we have two types of services. One are default services, and this is the variety of services that we have. You can see a number of services, like you can create maps, you can have JDBC, Gmail, documents, context, charts. This is the new one we added. So you can actually dynamically create charts and embed it in your UI. And then we added a few more just this week, which is services on BigQuery, URL shortener, tasks. Like the tasks that come up in your Gmail, you can access programmatically those tasks and schedule meetings and things like that. So, and we are constantly adding to this list of services. But the interesting thing here in our documentation side is the tutorial. Once you click on tutorials, you will see that there are 3 categories of tutorials: basic, advanced, and these are very step-by-step instructions on how to get started with AppScript. And we have our blog. Our blog is very widely followed, and I highly recommend you to follow our AppScript blog, Google Apps Developers blog. It is a great blog. If you are interested in Google Apps APIs, Google Apps products, and how to monetize Google Apps products, how to build great applications for Google Apps products, you should follow Google Apps Developers blog. With that, I will take some questions. Yes, please. So you want to programmatically access your inbox and then do something with it. Yes, Gmail services will let you do that. You can access your inbox and you can do whatever you want to do with it. Now, one thing that I didn't talk about is AppScript triggers. So this is a way to asynchronously execute your scripts. So you can write a script and you can tell AppScript, look, execute this, say, every 12 hours or every minute, and it will do that for you. So, yes. Yeah. Yes, you can do that. Yeah. Yes, please. So the question is, can I disable some features in Google Apps products using AppScript? So not yet, because there is no way to disable. But so what we are working on is providing domain administration APIs via AppScript. So for example, like there is a provisioning API. So if you have a Google AppScript domain, right, and you are a domain administrator, so you want to create, say, a form where a new employee comes in, say, okay, fill out this form if you want this ID or you want a mailbox or inbox. So you can write a script which actually runs when a form gets submitted, and as a result of that submission would be you would access provisioning API and create the Google Apps domain account for that user. So those are the types of use cases you can build. And you will get more control on how you manage your domain. We will provide those types of services in future. Yes, please. Louder, please, sorry. So the question is it possible to use App Engine data store? Now, App Engine, the answer is yes, there is a way to do it. But what you would have to do is you would have to write a service in App Engine which is a REST API that exposes that data, and then you can use something like that. Not that I know of. Yes. Somebody had a question here? Yeah, okay. Yes, please. Sorry, can't hear you. You have to. Yeah. So this is an excellent question. Are there quotas, meaning you are getting a free backend? What can I do with it? Are there restrictions? Like, are there restrictions on CPU cycles? So the answer is yes. But you will never hit those quotas if you are using the system wisely, your scripts are optimized, and you are not abusing the system. So this is meant for Google Apps users, Google Apps domain users. This is the workflow and automation is primary use case. So if you are using, say, URL fetch to launch a denial of service attack on some other site, that's not going to happen. I mean, we have sophisticated algorithms for managing our quotas, and if you are using the system wisely and not abusing it, you will not run into those quotas. Yeah.
Two-part question. Are these app scripts available just for domain apps, or can you use it with regular apps?
So the question is, are the scripts available just for Google Apps domains, or can regular Google Docs have that? So by regular Google Docs, I mean you're talking about consumer accounts like gmail.com accounts, right? So yes, the scripts are available for regular consumer accounts as well. You can, and exactly the same functionality is available. The workflow use case is more for enterprises. So that's why I talked a little bit about enterprises. But if you want to write scripts for your own personal productivity with your gmail.com accounts usage, that is perfectly okay.
Is there some kind of scripts menu like the app has that you can invoke those scripts?
Yes, so the question is again, can I invoke scripts through menus? So can I have a script which show up in a spreadsheet menu? Yes, you can do that. You can create custom menus in a spreadsheet and then let users invoke those scripts through menu. So that is very powerful. I did not go into that use case at all because we are more focusing on the workflow aspect in this talk. Yes. Yes, you can share scripts. So there are two ways to share scripts. One is the first and the popular way is that we have a script gallery. Hundreds of scripts have been contributed across various categories by our community. So that's one way to you publish a script and it's shared. The other way is through the project, like you can add collaborators to the same script and then two people can collaborate on a script. Yes, please. Right. So we do not have client-side events yet, but that's something being actively discussed. Yeah, the question was on client-side events. Like everything runs on server-side. What about the client? How can we use the power of the browser and manipulate browser DOM? You cannot manipulate browser DOM just yet because it's a server-side JavaScript. It's a JavaScript engine in the cloud. So everything happens on Google servers and the response is returned back to the browser. Any more questions? All right, well, thank you very much for coming.